Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons and Dragons lore full time thanks to your generous support, shares and views, with multiple uploads every week to help share the rich history of monsters, locations and mythologies of D&D mythologies. Today, in our continuing exploration of the monsters of the core 5th edition monster manual, we look at the Empyrean, which I have often mentioned as a great example of a base template, which is ideal for adding extra unique flavour to craft your own titans, demigods and super beings. Empyrean means of heaven, and in 5th edition, these are the celestial children of the gods of the upper planes. These are not the result of a crossbreeding between gods and mortals, which would be demigods. We will get a bit into that in a minute. The Empyrean is a titan, a huge, perfectly proportioned and supernaturally perfect physical being, superior to a mortal in every way. These are humanoids usually, who can tower up to 25 feet tall, and to further put that into perspective, here is an image of a 25-foot tall figure standing next to a 6-foot tall one, and also a storm giant. The male storm giant can stand up to 26 feet tall, so Empyreans are on eye-to-eye level with the largest of the giants and command tremendous respect from all true giants who are actually far below the raw physical capabilities of an Empyrean. Let's compare the two, shall we? The storm giant and the Empyrean facing off in a hand-to-hand combat match. First off, the Empyrean is probably attacking first. With a dexterity of 21, they are as fast as the lightning they can both hurl at each other. The storm giant has a comparatively ponderous dexterity of 14, still better than most humans, but totally outclassed by the titan. They have a similar level of raw strength. Empyreans have 30, and the storm giants have just a smidge lower at 29, but what a difference a point makes at that size. Then we have the truly staggering difference between them. An Empyrean's constitution is 30, and they not only have 19 d12 plus 190, or between 209 and 418 hit points, their natural armor class, without any additional protection, is 22, and they are immune to physical attacks that are not magical. Storm giants have a constitution of 20, they have 20 d12 plus 100, or between 120 and 340 hit points, and a natural armor class of 12, counting their dexterity, which they typically increase to an armor class of 16 by wearing scale armor. They have no immunity to physical attacks, so getting into a hand-to-hand fight with an Empyrean would be sheer folly. They would be beaten to death in a similar way this middle-aged YouTuber would be taken apart by a world champion MMA fighter. Where the storm giant has a slight advantage is their mastery of lightning and thunder, and they have immunity to both forms of damage, and the Empyrean does not. Well, it would give the Empyrean a nice little jolt for a second. They would smile at the well-landed shot, possibly with a soot-smeared nose, and then unleash bolts of every form of energy that the storm giant has no immunity to. Because they are celestial beings, they have resistance to all forms of magical attack. Any weapon they pick up and use is considered magical. They have legendary resistance 3 times per day. They've got extremely high saving throws. They have innate spellcasting abilities that allow them to cast Greater Restoration, Pass Without Trace, Water Breathing and Water Walk at will, plus Commune, Dispel Evil and Good, Earthquake, Firestorm and Plane Shift once per day. That is just innate spell-like abilities they can cast using their charisma attribute. They are quite capable of learning other magic, both arcane and divine, and typically carry some form of signature really powerful magical weapon or armor on top of their other supernatural powers. We have a maul listed here in the monster manual as a good baseline example of their hit bonus and what sort of damage their stupendous strength can inflict with a simple bludgeoning weapon. And bear in mind, this is simply because an unarmed titan, an unarmed titan may show up and then just pick up a tree, or tear a tree out of the ground, and all of a sudden it's a magical maul, essentially. Also, they have Trembling Strike as one of their legendary actions, but you're free to give them any sort of weapon that makes sense for your particular Empyrean, and absolutely swap that legendary action for something else related to a signature weapon. A spell they are really good at casting, or something else. For example, they could maybe teleport into the air, taking a huge chunk of the ground with them, and when they reappear they slam the chunk of floor down onto whoever is below them, and then land on top of it. Perhaps they can fire off another energy bolt, or let loose a bellowing roar to shock and intimidate any enemy before them. I will note that Earthquake is an extremely good spell, and the Empyrean will probably start combat with this. reserving Firestorm for later if it starts to take the combat more seriously. Don't underestimate how effective Earthquake can be to shut down a party who don't all have access to flight. Particularly given the boost to the difficulty of saving throws thanks to the Empyrean's extremely high casting attribute. Also, the Empyrean can just wade into combat, particularly if you get really, really nasty and give them a pet beholder. See, this is why I rarely mention devastating monster combinations. The beholder shuts down magical weapons. The Empyrean is immune to non-magical weapon damage. So welcome to the TPK. If you've not got a fresh character sheet, I took the liberty of printing some off before the encounter began. Empyreans don't age, but they can be killed, though the chances of them being almost immediately resurrected are extremely high, as these are the children of actual gods. Thankfully, these resurrections take place in the celestial realm the Empyreans reside in, or where the Empyrean was conceived, born, or spends the majority of their time. They are also... There are a few good reasons why Empyreans don't often live on the prime material world. They just visit for a little while for some specific purpose. Celestial realms are often divinely morphic, which means that on their home plane, Empyreans can shape and reshape reality by mere force of their divine will. If they want to manifest a goblet of perfect wine, they just think about it and it's in their hand. They can command celestial beings and are household names to every being in that celestial realm. They have the protection of their parents, and the gods don't often have children. When they do, it's usually for a very good reason, so they are unlikely to let that effort be wasted and will provide whatever that child needs in order to grow into its greater destiny. If they follow along with that destiny, everything is basically laid out before them, so they have no reason to go to the primordial world and slum it with mortal beings. Not all Empyreans are that interested in fighting mortal creatures. Their legendary action called Bolster is given as a good example of how they can act as a positive divine force, sending out super good vibes to all non-hostile creatures within 120 feet and granting them immunity to being charmed, frightened, and giving them advantage on all ability checks and saving throws until the end of the Empyrean's next turn. I think it's perfectly reasonable to give them the ability to raise the dead, restore stone to flesh, dispel magic, and force polymorphed creatures to return to their true form. But again, these are just general things that you might expect from celestial beings, particularly ones that have been summoned or, through their own efforts, have basically arrived at the head of a great divine army on some sort of crusade which benefits their parent, their chosen cause, their plane of existence, etc. The alignment given in the book for the Empyrean is unaligned, which is kind of D&D code for we don't know anything really. Traditionally, the Titans are of chaotic good or chaotic evil alignment. Why chaotic, you say? Well, the old saying, power corrupts, certainly is a factor. What laws other than those of their parents constrain the behaviour of an Empyrean? If they decide to rebel against their parents, what rules apply to them at all? They are creatures that are above the law. They do what they want and do and will view any opposition to their will as a personal challenge, at best, and an insulting affront at worst. When a Titan doesn't get their way, when someone tells them no, their temper tantrum can level a city. Luckily, they're actually quite lawful and all chaotic good, or lawful good. Most Titans are not overly concerned with what goes on in the mortal world. They reside in the plains of Olympus, Asgard, the happy hunting grounds, perhaps Arcadia and the blessed fields of Elysium, Mount Celestia of course, even Bitopia and Archeron. Less often Hades, Mechanus, and the various lower planes, they do get around. Being such as these has little trouble travelling the planes of existence, and their interests can take them far and wide across the multiverse. One thing I really need to stress is that no two Empyreans are exactly the same. They are totally diverse, and there may be very little that sort of lets you know who their divine parents or parent or the reason why they exist. This is the reason why the Empyrean is kind of bare bones in the monster manual. It's that there is so much potential for great differences between them. It's impossible to cover all in such a limited space. Also, how they came to be is not limited by biology. Since gods are beings who can often incarnate across multiple dimensions simultaneously, may exist in multiple different forms at the same time, we really have no way of knowing what governs this form of life. What we do know is that, like their parents, they are closely associated with a particular domain. For example, it may be possible to have a towering titan who's completely obsessed with cats and can communicate with them. summon them and control them, any number of allies as well. Personally, I prefer to give them a domain that is quite obscure and interesting, something really memorable for the players. It states in the monster manual, an Empyrean can experience deity-like fits of serenity or rage. It can affect the environment around it by its mood. When the Empyrean is unhappy, the clouds may cry tears of salt water, the wildflowers in surrounding meadows may wilt. Dead flesh might wash ashore on lakes or rivers. Oh, dead fish, not flesh. I suppose it's the same thing. And nearby forest might lose the leaves on its trees. When an Empyrean is jubilant, sunlight follows it everywhere, small animals frolic in its footsteps, and birds fill the sky with their pleasant songs. So combine these with minor divine effects with elements of the Empyrean's domain. Perhaps the Titan becomes upset, all cats within a mile randomly claw and hiss at any person near them. When they're happy, the cats will purr. There are a few ways to easily include these Titans in your game. If you're playing in the Forgotten Realms, pick any one or two of the gods and consider what their offspring of their unlikely pairing might be like. A daughter of Gond and Malar. Preposterous. What if an evil god found some way to create offspring that combined some aspect of them and that of the imprisoned super-powerful mad god Tharizdun? What if two relatively minor gods of the Fey realm produced a somewhat low-powered Empyrean who escaped to the prime material realm to avoid getting bullied by other Titans, and became something of a bully themselves, lording it over the mortal beings? What if a good Empyrean was just happened to have completed a quest for their parents in the outer one of the lower planes, or become involved in a harrowing fight to save a plane from being swallowed up by the abyss, and now they're venting their temporary madness on the prime material world, where the gods only intervene when their destruction or drama threatens the overall balance or their own specific interests. Otherwise, they're just letting the Titan get it out of the system. What would happen if some evil wizard discovered a way to summon and control an Empyrean, or siphon off their power? What if they had some titanic ritual for divine ascendance planned out, and part of that was capturing and sacrificing an Empyrean? What if some ancient evil was long entombed and forgotten beneath a now prosperous and peaceful kingdom, and an Empyrean hero suddenly shows up to release and battle this evil thing for no other reason than the mere sport of it, and there happens to be a very good chance that they'll lose and the thing will be free? Well, you will note that I use the word Titan and Empyrean kind of interchangeably, and those who have joined the game post 4th edition might be a wee bit confused by this, seeing as in Faerun, the Titans are the children of Anam Allfather, the good patriarch of the race of giants, the god patriarch of the race of giants, and those immortal Titans went on to sire all the different types of true giants. Well, yeah, they are technically still Titans or Empyreans, and you can certainly use that same stat block to represent the founding fathers of the true giants. They are the offspring of Anam and Othea, both divine beings, although technically Othea is a primordial, I think. 4th edition is predictably even more confusing, as it needed to compensate for its broken power creep by creating super giants, so it borrowed the term Titan, made them sort of elemental giants, and shoehorned them roughly into the lore, which we now have almost universally quietly brushed under the proverbial rug of D&D history. However, Titans have long been a race in and of themselves. Basically, they are a godlike race created by the gods of lawful and chaotic good alignment who live in the good aligned outer planes. Wikipedia says that they act as servants, consorts, advisors, representatives, and avatars, and they're only one step down from the gods as rulers of the universe, and not even the greatest celestials can match their might. Titans are not omnipotent or omniscient. They are subject to wild and chaotic moods. Many have different aspects of themselves, like alternate versions which manifest at different times. They are emotionally expressive, fiery, passionate, and yet they love completely and are devoted. They can also be the most lawful and forthright of creatures, tempered by their enormous tempers, which will see them unleash war, disease, and disaster on mere mortals. They're also more like the classic Greek gods, and they have no restrictions on their involvement with lesser beings. They can be jealous, petulant, vengeful, even malicious. They can also grant incredible boons, use mortals in games and contests between each other, interfere with the rise and fall of nations, and occasionally risk everything to step in and save mortals from extremely destructive threats from the ancient times. For example, some Titans might set out to promote some chosen mortals, such as a band of adventurers, leading them with hints, clues, and revealed secrets on a path to great power, which may accidentally lead to releasing a Tarrasque on the world, The Titans will then feel obligated to step in and contain this disaster, perhaps even facing their own destruction in the course of events. Titans may be communicated with much more easily than the gods. They also have tons of information on the world, on other worlds, other planes of existence, and the events of the ancient past, but dealing with them is an exercise in caution, as to get the Titans overly interested in you is to invite their fickle amusements, which can have disastrous consequences. So, far from a bland entry in the Monster Manual, the listing for the Empyrean is your gateway into the upper limits of high-level play in Dungeons and Dragons. When the players start to set their eyes on the lofty goal of characters ascending to the outer planes and possible divine status, they can also represent the untimely intrusion of the greater politics of the multiverse in the sleepy, low-level backwoods of your current campaign you're running, and may represent some major goals, certainly some very difficult challenges in your game. Like, subscribe, check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos, buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, check out Patron Blades for a mighty smooth shave, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.